second. All right, thanks for coming down, Richard. Really appreciate your time today. Do you want to give everyone in the team a little bit of a rundown of who you are and what you're doing with all the different plugins and technical SEO work that you've been doing recently or over the years?
Thanks for having me, James. Appreciate the welcome, mate. As James said, my name's Richard. I've met Darcy before. How you going, Darcy? Just been doing internet marketing for around 10 years now. Started with a lot of web development. Just let me adjust this. Started with a lot of web development, then moved slowly into SEO. After I was building the sites, you know, I thought they were the best sites in the niche. They definitely had the best content and the layout and the design, but for reasons unbeknown to me, they just wouldn't rank. And then into the rabbit hole, I went with SEO for a good 5, 6, 7 years, you know, and then started moving back into development. I was really forced to from the SEO climate and just the demographic of what's happening with the algo and stuff. Working out, you know, why sites aren't ranking again has forced you back into development because there are a lot of speed related issues, layout issues and content issues, etc. And just develop SerpWorx, as you know, a browser extension to help you quickly diagnose what a site's for, what are the weaknesses and strengths of a site, just on the fly really quickly, or when you got a client on the phone, and just to give you a top level overview when you're in the SERPs wondering how hard it might be to rank for a keyword. Yeah, and just, you know, continually forging forward, learning new languages as I go along and still enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean, like, what are the biggest issues that you've seen for sites not ranking? You mentioned that you back in the day you had some sites and they weren't ranking. What do you think are the most important things if you have a site that's having some technical difficulties and it's not ranking? Like, what are the key things that you'll go and look out for?
Yeah, back in the day, it was completely different. All of the research just uncovered links and more dirty links and even dirtier links. And that's why the top 4 were usually up there. You know, they all had a good slew of, you know, high quality PBNs there, or they weren't even high quality back those days, but jumped to 222 now and things are completely changed. Overall, you know, the reason a site ranks is because it's got the most diverse spread of signals it can give to Google. You know, no one really quite knows how many quality factors are on a site that Google's checking for just regards to on-site. It's over 200 plus on-site factors, and no one can really comply with that list fully. We can all do our best, but we're all kept in the dark as usual. But, you know, just making sure the on-site stuff's all completely up to scratch first, and then looking for off-site. And what I find is that it's the site with the most even spread of signals that ranks the highest. So you might have a site that's actually got fairly average on-site stuff, but they got really good off-site stuff. They got really good social, they got good EAT, authority, domain age, and a whole slew of other metrics that are just propping up that on-site, and they're doing really well. Where you get a site directly underneath it in a really difficult niche, they don't have many links, but they still got good traffic. They got good referral traffic. The site's lightning quick. The site looks like $1 million, and that's enough to get them to number 2. So it's really a diverse range, and it's hard to put your finger on what it is, because if your site falls short of any aspect, or your off-site profile falls short in any area in a competitive niche, you'll bear the consequences of that.
Yeah, exactly. What are you looking at for site speed? Like, if a client comes to you, what are the key areas that you try to optimize first for site speed? Are you looking to optimize heavy image resources, or are you looking at like remove like non-use plugins and non-use resources? Like, what are some quick wins that you usually do to speed a site up, or do you just have to rebuild it from the ground up?
Yeah, that's actually what I prefer to do. I prefer to completely build it from the ground up in just pure custom HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You've got complete control over every element there, and then give the client a back-end database where you can make content adjustments. That's definitely the preferred way. And that's an easy way to get 100 out of 100. Well, it's not easy, but That's the only part that you can guarantee 100 out of 100 every single time. Every site's different, as you know, and it just depends what the Lighthouse speed test says. Like you say, there's images are usually really quick wins. A big problem I see recently is just not having the image in the correct format, still having it in JPEG instead of WebP. Images are wrong size, images without dimensions. Then there's an unused plugin, and then really besides images, which can quite easily be fixed with a few plugins and stuff, but besides images, you really start after hacking into WordPress. Now you've got plugins, as you said, loading on pages that aren't even calling that plugin script, but still the JavaScript's being loaded in there. You go to any WordPress page, you know, any page, there's meant to be one CSS file and one JS file. That's it. It doesn't matter how, unless it's a gigantic JS file, it should still be one JS file, and all the JS files should be concatenated together. You go to any WordPress page, you look at the source code and search for .js, you're looking at about loading 35 separate JavaScript files. So it's 35 separate page HTTP requests just to load the page. And trying to fix that in WordPress, now you're going to move into some pretty sophisticated plugins, speed optimization plugins, and you know, every corner you turn, something breaks, something doesn't load right, works good on these 80% of pages, doesn't work on this page. So you really end up chasing your tail a lot with WordPress trying to do that. And then there's the other side of the coin, whereby the Lighthouse test can give you a savage score, might give you a 72 or something, which is a complete failure. Anything under 90 is a failure, but the site feels snappy, and the actual first contextual paint isn't bad, and the time to interactive isn't too bad, but the score is horrible. And then the opposite is true too. I see a lot of WordPress sites optimized. Oh, my WordPress site's 100 out of 100. And then lo and behold, it's 99 or 98 or even 100. But the actual user metrics are really low. Like the, you know, time to interactive is over 1 second. There's contextual layout shift somewhere. You know, the actual feeling of the site is not that snappy as what the speed test says. So the speed test is synthetic, as you know, but it's when you're building HTML, it always correlates with real world experience. If it's 100, it feels snappy as, where WordPress site's a bit of a mixed bag. You know, you can still score high and still have a slow end front end experience.
Yeah, no, I hear. I think the biggest issue that we have always is like we get a lot of clients that come to our business and they're already tied to a certain CMS. And, you know, from a business point of view, it's like, it's very hard for them to change. But I agree, from like if you're a service-based business and then you want to have, you want to start from scratch, and then you have something that you can optimize heavily, like, or you're a smaller business, you want to start from like a real clean and fast loading design. But then for like a lot of mid to large companies, they already are tied to a certain CMS based off like a long-term deal, or just the business likes that because it's how their inventory is set up or whatever and whatnot. So it's a tricky one. I will agree 100%.
Yeah. And it's very tricky, and you got to decide what's important for the CEO of that business. I mean, you can put it in plain language and say, look, everyone loves editing your pages. They love adding images. They love being able to create a new URL on that. But this is all coming at the cost of customer experience. You've got, you know, 20,000 visitors a month, all having a substandard experience. So your developer has an easy day job. If you coded it properly and done it custom, okay, it might take 5 minutes longer. Some things will actually take quicker to edit, or a page or an image or something like that. But those 20,000 people are going to have their experience is going to be improved by at least 20 to 30% on every single page load for the rest of the life of the site, which ultimately the only reason we do it is for conversions. And that's the thing. There's no downside to super quick pages. It drives conversions through the roof. It helps, gives you a good leg up with SEO. It helps with all visitor data points. It's just there's no downside to it. But being tied to that CMS, like you said, that ultimately is the excuse. Oh, we're tied to that CMS, so that's the reason we're going to give the rest of our customers a negative experience on the site.
Agree. What other technical SEO elements do you normally put a high priority to? It sounds like speed's a real big one for you, and just looking into like your core web vitals. But what other technical SEO factors are you putting a high emphasis towards when you're looking at websites that are existing or building a new site? Like, what are your main things that you go after?
I won't cover the basics, which is H1,
Yeah.
H2 and all that, and content. That's all should be a given for any beginner SEO, and everyone's got their own formula and balance for that. Some pages 2 H2s, 3 H1s, whatever the page calls for, etc. So I won't go into that because it's too varied. But other stuff that people I find don't pay enough attention to definitely is accessibility. You've got to be scoring 100 out of 100 on accessibility. If Google's got the choice of if mine and your site are perfectly equal in every aspect, accessibility, and mine's accessible, they'll put mine above yours or vice versa. Yeah, and accessibility is not just for disabled people. Accessible sites are good for everyday users. Like, I can't tell you the pet hate when you trying to read the text on a button and the color is virtually the same color as the text. The contrast is a big pet peeve because I don't have 20/20 vision. And I often face that. I'm like, why on earth did you make that text the same color as the background nearly? Why have you got text on top of a background image there? Little things like that, having an image as a link, but not having a area label attached to it. So the screen reader can't even see what, or make sense of what that link is. And you'd be surprised about the percentage of the population that actually uses the browsers with screen readers on and certain accessibility features enabled. It's quite a large percentage, So I pay high attention to that because it just should be right. And at the end of the day, the only reason it's not right is because it's coded wrong. Why isn't it accessible? Because the developer didn't put that tag and he didn't put that in, he didn't do that, he didn't nest it there, etc. In other words, it's invalid HTML. It might not show as a invalid area on W3C or something validation, but it definitely shows on accessibility validation. And when you're building sites for companies, anything related to government or, a whole slew of sectors, really, sometimes finance and hospitality, medical, you've got to have it accessible. It's got to comply with all those. There can't be no loopholes in that area. Secondary to that, schema has to be baked into it properly. Complementing schema, I still like Dublin Core. And complementing Dublin Core, I still like a really deeply fleshed out meta tag. Like, most SEOs stop at title tag, description tag, and that's about it. My meta tag template is about 68 lines long, 68 separate lines of different meta elements, business category, copyright, business founding, owner. And then, of course, as well, there's all the open graph stuff for schema and Facebook sharing, which sometimes isn't even implementing. So again, what are we doing here? We're just going back to all those symbols. 200 site checks. Has he got schema? Has he got Dublin? Has he got meta? Has he got this? Has he got that? It's just a long laundry list to check off. But I pay, close attention to those because when I build the sites, I've got granular control, so I can just bake it straight into it.
Exactly. How back to the accessibility point, I think that's a good one. What tools are you utilizing to check for accessibility? I know, like, if you've been in the game for a long time, you can just do it manually. But like for people that don't know a lot about accessibility, I know there's been tools in the past like tenon.io where you can scrape a page for like accessibility issues and things like that. Are there any other tools that you would recommend that you've utilized that like you feel are really good for someone who's not an expert like yourself that wants to get involved with checking for accessibility and getting into that element of SEO? Because you're right, it's not something that a lot of people talk about.
Yeah, because it's hard because you've got to really have access to that code, and usually that code's buried in a WordPress template that no one wants to touch because for starters, they might not even have a child theme. And then if they do have a child theme, well, suddenly you're basically making a brand new template because a lot of the code is baked directly into the theme. So you're editing the theme and then, you update the parent theme 6 months later and everything goes kaput again. Accessibility, Lighthouse is always a good starting point. They give you the warnings and they kind of show you all the warnings, and it has a little drop down, and then you can click on the link and go straight to the Google breakdown of that accessibility error or feature. And then there's a couple of good browser extensions. I don't remember their names off the top of my head, but they also plug into the back of DevTools in your browser and gives you an extra tab up the top of your browser when you're looking at the source code and stuff. And click on it and it'll just find a few more accessibility errors than Lighthouse will, or it will find the same errors and just give you a bit more guidance on how easily and how to quickly fix them.
Yeah,
And
no,
really, and a lot of accessibility should be dealt with in the design phase. Like if you're getting the design for the new site, the PSD, the XD or Figma files, you should be running accessibility checks on that, because there's a lot of accessibility plugins for those tools as well. Designer hands you off a nice, pretty homepage, but check the very button up the top, log in the contrast ratio, fails the accessibility test.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an area that you see if you go to like conferences and events in the US market. I see a lot more like talks on accessibility, but like in the Australian market, I haven't really seen anyone talking about it at all, hardly. I mean, bits and pieces, but definitely I think I know in the US, like accessibility is there's been a few like lawsuits where people have been using screen readers and they've gone to a website and then they've just sued the website because they couldn't order their groceries and whatnot. So I think the market over there is a lot more aware of it, but I guarantee you there's big businesses in Australia that aren't doing the basics from an accessibility point of view, because even my vision's quite good and I go to websites and I have trouble clicking on certain buttons, and and you imagine someone who's a lot older and they're using a screen reader, a lot of drama. So no, that's a really good point. But back to that meta optimization stuff that you were talking about. Have you tested that? How important do you think that is? Is that something that you feel if there's a one-to-one, like if Google goes with a site on a one-to-one ratio and then you're both covering everything, do you reckon that could be something to give you that little bit of an extra edge?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm hoping. And they're in the standards. These meta tags that I'm talking about are in the standards. So why would they exist if they weren't relevant? Whether they still have an actual positive ranking effect, it would be very difficult to test. I mean, I know a lot about testing and, random keyword tests of split results on sites that rank for garbage keywords to do that isolated testing environment. So you could kind of test it that way, but it'd be very difficult, I'd say. I just put it in there because it's just a bit of housework that I do. Instead of just putting that template in, I just bake in that template. For all I know, to be honest, it could be giving me a slight retardation in ranking, but I don't put the keyword meta tag in there. I don't put a few other superfluous meta tags in there, but the ones I've got are really being filtered well, and I've dug deep and wide across the internet to find them. I'll have to pass you across the swipe file and you'll see what I mean. It's just, you'll see yourself in a few meta tags. Yeah, why don't I have that in there? That makes sense. And it's in no way, shape or form spammy. And underlying all of that behind it is my mission is to get sites to rank with no links. If I can do all this stuff, the site speed, the double and the schema, the meta, the on-site SEO, the laundry list goes on and on and on and on. I want to release it into the wild and I want it to perform, and I don't want to have to worry about building links. That he who can get to the top of the rankings with the least amount of links possible is the best SEO. Anyone can chuck links at a site, and he who does that has got the safest site, I believe. Like if your site's ranking at the top and you've only got 20, or let's say, be realistic, 120 decent links, and all the sites below you have got thousands of links, you've got a lot of room for movement there, and you're doing something really right. And Google's just reinforcing that by giving you those rankings. So I'd rather be the site ranked in number one with the least amount of links than the site ranked in number one with the most amount of links, because anything can go wrong at any time. What works in links one day just suddenly stops working the next day. Suddenly all YouTube links are just disavowed and counted as sponsor links. Now suddenly all Twitter links have got taken the no follow Ahref attribute off again. So again, sites with thousands of Twitter shares with links in it, they just got a kick again. And sites with YouTube links, they just got a big slap again. And that's what I'm saying. The least links you can rank with, the better.
Yeah, I hear you. I think if you can perform with a lower amount of links, and the links that you do have are high quality, you're gonna be in a better position than someone who has built their profile on using links from like marketplaces and stuff like that. The type of links that anyone can get, you know, like, and then you see sites that sell for a lot of money and they've built their link profile and like high quality resource links and things like that and content assets, and then they're covering all these on-page factors to ensure that they've checked out everything. That's going to be a safer bet, you know. Like you're going to be in a safer position. I agree. I think Google's actively devaluing a lot of their lower quality links too. Like I have noticed that a lot of people that were heavily invested in PBNs and stuff like that, I've seen them getting devalued. You know, gone are the days of the low quality one-page PBN working. I'm seeing these type of links get devalued, and people will just throw in like 100 PBN links at a page, and they're all one-page foreign PBNs, and they're not working anymore. You know, whereas 5 or 6 years ago they might have worked. You know, but the risk to the site is big. So I'm seeing more like sites ranking that are covering the factors that you're talking about. You know, I saw a long tail site yesterday that was super, super clean in terms of speed and design. And it was essentially built for SEO, you know, and it only had it was like a DR2 or something. And it was ranking for like 5,000 different keywords and getting a lot of traffic in a niche that I deem to be medium competition. So it's an interesting area, that's for sure. And I think it's something that we're going to be seeing potentially more of in the future. But I wouldn't discredit good links. You know, I think the best link is one that your competitors can't get, or a good link that is higher value, a link that's on a page with traffic, a link that's ranking. You know, like I was talking to someone the other day, another SEO in Australia, and he said the links that he tries to get are only on pages that are currently ranking, you know. So stuff like that. Like if you're doing your link building like that, you're probably going to be in a healthy position. But you're right, things can change, you know. Google can make a certain tweak to the algo, and then it's like people that have gone all in on AI content, you know. Google can make a few tweaks and certain quality checks, or there could be like a quality update, and then something could really affect those sites. So you're right, you really got to do everything right. You got to do the speed stuff right. You really got to do all the different little bits and pieces. And I'm seeing that more and more.
Yeah, and something that you touched on inadvertently there was that site that you mentioned was ranking really well with very few links. And another thing that we haven't really talked about, what is driving rankings through the roof, especially lately, is feedback straight from Google, straight from their Chrome browser, straight from analytics. They know when traffic goes to that site, it stays on there. It doesn't go back to the search results. They know they get decent page views, good time on site. All those things are invisible to you and I when we look at a site, unless we've got access privilege to their analytics. But maybe that's one of the reasons why. So I believe lately what Google's doing is more of a voting system for the general visitors of the browser, whereby big niches, even medium niches, okay, you got a hot site, you got a decent amount of links, we haven't seen you, I'll give you the benefit of doubt, into number 8 you go. Now you're in position number 8 with a search volume of 40,000 visitors a month on a keyword like that. There's enough search and volume that's going to trickle down to your position 8 to have a look. And then slowly as time goes on, as the week goes on, hey, even though this guy's getting very minimal click through from the 40,000 visitors a month because he's in position 8, the visitors that do hit his site have got way better metrics than the sites above him. And this shouldn't be happening. Let's bump him up to number 6. In no way, shape or form does he deserve to be number 6 due to link equity, due to anything else. It's just user metrics. We're seeing now the same results of the same traffic. Now there's about 3,000 or 4,000 more visitors a month or a week coming to this guy's site. We're seeing that interaction. The metrics are actually even better than they were when he was in 6th place. The metrics of this guy's site and the user interaction and the feedback and the data points that Google measures are actually exceeding the sites that are in number 2 and number 3 spot. And he's in number 6. Up he goes to number 4. And again, they run the same test. He's getting even more traffic now. We're still seeing the same feedback. Number 3, number 2, number 1, without building a single link.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And sorry, man, like that's what Google's doing, is handing us the platter. Like Google knows it's genuine 40,000 IP addresses. They're not fake. They're not bots. These are real people. You guys voted for this site to be number 1, not us. If it was up to us and there was no traffic, we'd just put the guy in number 1 that was in number 1 because he had the best link profile and blah, blah, blah. But you guys voted for this, because every time we bump this guy down at number 3, you guys tend to bounce off sites 1 and 2 and end up hitting his site and staying the longest on his site and actually hit the contact page. So you guys voted for this site for number 1. And that's what I'm seeing a lot lately too. And vice versa, for agencies like yourself, you break your back. You give all the advice to the client saying, hey, we recommend you change this. We recommend you get off this. No, we can't do that. Tie to that. But anyway, where's my link report? Oh, wow, that's a nice link. Well done, James. Another great link, another great link. I believe you see those results go up to 3, position 2, position 1. The links are working. You know, beautiful to see the hard work pay off. Lo and behold, a couple of weeks later, the user feedback comes in. Hey, they don't like what they see in number 1 here, despite these DR80 links. And slowly it goes downhill. So all your hard work kind of goes down the drain because the front end doesn't match the off-site. They gave you the benefit of the doubt just based on that authoritative link equity you got. We'll put you in number 1. No one with link equity like that's going anywhere but number 1. Hey, but the users voted it down in the traffic, in the response, the bounce rate, this, that, the other, and now you're just sitting at 3 or 4, even though your SEO metrics are way better than the sites above you.
Yeah, and I think you see that in niches where, like, say for example, it's like a local niche, and you've got like you got a couple of local players, right? If someone searches for like electrician Parramatta, right, they'll see a couple of local guys that are in Parramatta, and I feel like they could have lesser metrics, but they'd probably get that satisfying the user in query, right? Then you see marketplaces seem to bounce a bit around too, you know, like a marketplace that might compare the top 10 guys, but some of those players might not be in Sydney, you know, and the user experience for that marketplace might not convert the user, so they might bounce, you know. I'm seeing niches like that where things are kind of bouncing around a little bit recently. So it's never sticky in some of those more competitive verticals where you do have like local players, and then you got like marketplaces, and then but then you throw some spanner in the works, like you see like exact match domains all of a sudden coming up, and gone are the days when Google rolled out the exact match domain update and devalued the exact match domains. I've seen recently that like exact match domains are starting to come back in the market, you know, searching competitive queries, you know, like best cryptocurrency exchange or something like that. You see like an exact match domain in 2nd position, and you see an international site, and then you see someone doing parasite SEO. Like there's a lot going on still, you know?
Yeah. And you see all that because I just don't think not one of them's really done the job properly and right, because as you know, that would take a $25,000 site. It depends on the cost of your labor, you know, it's at least going to cost you 200 to 300, 400 hours to build the king's king of sites in that niche. And then it's going to take you months of outreach, months of content creation. And that's just a long way around. And that's the only really way to get to the top. And that's why you see all this other bouncing stuff, because that shortcut works a bit here. Let's do this. Well, that works. And if one guy just done it right, he'd be up there.
You're right. And I think the problem with affiliate niches is a lot of people are looking for like the next shortcut, you know, I'd get this shortcut. Okay, that's tricked out. Google's devalued it. All right, then we're going to hit the EDM domain again.
Yeah.
And the exact EMD domain, exact match domain. We'll hit that. Oh, that's not working. Oh, we're going to try this new strategy, you know, like, but you're right. If they build the best site for that market, and the longevity of the site is going to be around for a lot longer than try to do all these little bits and pieces. I think that is, that's a really good point. But yeah.
What I see too a bit, James, is the opposite of that is true too. It might be a carpet cleaner or something in Borkham Hills. The site is disgustingly slow. It looks okay, but it's horrible, and the metrics are absolutely atrocious. But yet he sits in number one there all day, month in, month out. And it's just because he's a hyper local business, and he's had a verified GMB listing for the last 15 years or whenever that first came out, you know, and it's just an ancient business. And Google have somehow got a secret way of knowing what's going on in the offline world there. They know these businesses are real in the offline world. Somehow they must listen to the chatter on social. I don't know how they do it, but I've seen it time and time again where sites you would score a 2 or 3 out of 10, and a backlink profile of 1 out of 10 are outranking sites 10 times better. And it's just because they're actually a real business with a shop front on the actual street of Castle Hill, whatever they're trying to rank for. And they've just got a benefit of the doubt that's lasted them years and years and years.
Exactly. And like, I think other factors like the city limits, you know, like things like that, you know, are they sitting in the city limits of like GMB? Like, do they have a local phone number that's for Australia, or are they are they actually using like an O2 number, or are they using like is it like someone just doing like a lead generation play where they just got like a 1-300 number that's redirecting, and they're doing something like that? So I think you're right. If you are hyper local to a niche, you can succeed. And I do see that. Like sometimes you see like we have clients that are like big marketplaces, and they rank for certain queries, and then you see like a random small company pop up out of nowhere, and you look at the site and you're like, this is garbage. Like, how is it ranking? But it comes down to hyper locality. I think Google is definitely rewarding that 100%.
Yeah, and circling full back to what you were saying before about those more competitive niches with 20, 40, 50, 100,000 searches a month, not local or anything. I'd rather be the guy in 7th position with a clean, cutting edge site that's got the best user metrics than the guy in, 2nd position with all those links. Because I know eventually, at the end of the day, that's ultimately what Google's goal is, to try to cut through all the noise of the links. They don't have nothing else to go by. If you voted for my site by giving me a link, what can I do about it? I trust your site, so I should trust his. They got nothing else to go by. But as time goes on, more and more, it's just about user metrics, speed, everything tied in with user satisfaction and satisfying the search intent. And if your site does that the best, it's only a matter of time before you start ranking among the big boys, even though you might have the link equity not to do so. And I think that each algorithm update, as more sophisticated as it gets, that's ultimately what they're trying to cut to. If you own Google, wouldn't you do that? Wouldn't you put what you deem to be the best 10 sites on the first page, and then let all the bulk amount of traffic sort out which one's the best? The best one will bubble to the top based on the user feedback and the data and that? Or would you just put the guy in first place simply because he's got a link from Women's Day or National 9 News or something,
Yeah, I agree. How important do you think brand implicates that strategy though? Because if you're a well-known brand, you're gonna get the lion's share of traffic. Like if you're Coles or Woolworths and you're in the ranks, the mum and dad shoppers are going to click on you. But if you're Joe Blogg's shopping marketplace, like people, what the hell is this? Like that's where I think the brand power still does have a lot of weight in SEO, like natural links and and a lot of brand searches, like when we get some of these really big brand clients that we work with, they have hundreds of thousands of brand clicks each month, like, and then I do feel like when people search for like, they put the brand plus the query, and you're seeing a lot of variations of that coming in. It definitely does help them as well.
For sure.
So
Yeah.
that's like an added boost that these big brands get. But then it goes back to all the fundamentals too. They might be doing all that well. They might have a lot of brand stuff, but then they haven't done a lot of on-site factors. Their site loads slow. They haven't even thought about accessibility. They got white on white buttons, or someone's just stuffed up basic stuff. So it's a big,
I think the brands
one.
I think giant brands actually hijack keywords as well. Like you might type in hardware. How many people, like, this is 1 million searches a month for a keyword like that. So you type in hardware and then you don't see Bunnings. So hardware Bunnings. And then Google sees that. It's like, why do people, okay, when they want hardware, they mean Bunnings. Okay, from this day forthwith now, Bunnings ranks first for hardware. They don't deserve to by any long shot. But people keep telling us when they search for that, that's what they want. So yeah, that brand effect again, on steroids.
Exactly. I think brand is important, but I might open up the questions to the team. Does anyone have any questions for Richard? I know he's been doing tech SEO and tricking out sites for over 10 years. Has anyone got any questions for him that you want to ask about stuff that we've been talking about, or something completely different?
Yeah, Richard, thanks for your talk beforehand. I just wanted to talk to you about how you go about convincing clients or anyone that you're working with to invest in kind of those deeper areas of technical SEO. I think there's definitely a lack of education specifically in that area, and how you would convince them of the value of that. And also, if you talk to clients or anyone that you're consulting with regarding user metrics and how that's playing more and more of a role in the SERPs.
Yeah, sure. It's a great question, Darcy. And what I tend to stealthily do is back them into a corner, verbally or conversationally, by unwittingly, like I just wave into the conversation gently, and I say, look, you know you've got an issue with this and that on your site and that, and they and ah about it, and they give you every excuse on the sun. And then, so I really drill down to the bottom, and John, you're telling me that primarily what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but you're telling me that the reason you won't get off that is because Susie in admin and Jeff in sales want to be able to update that. Yeah, that's right. And otherwise, what they have to do is they have a really hard time doing this and then this. Well, John, you realize that you've got 40,000 people on your site every month, yeah? And then, yeah, what's your point? Well, you're making life difficult for those 40,000 people to make two other people's life easier. And it's for a few reasons as well. Like, you don't really know why the client's doing it. Are they doing it to save money, or are they doing it to keep control and keep it in-house? So it's like someone hiring Prosperity. We want to rank in that, but we only want to let you build certain links. We want to build these other links. It sort of doesn't work. They can't keep control of everything and then expect you to do what you got to do to get them the results they want. So you got to educate them in that way. And the best way I found, like I said, is just sort of putting it back onto them and telling them that this is affecting so many more thousands of people. And not only that, is it giving them a displeasurable experience. You can't really quite measure how many conversions you're losing and how many sales you're losing about per month. Like, it's 40,000 visitors a month. What if I just gave you $10,000 at the end of each month? Would you let Susie and John go? And not let them go, but would you let the site be built the way it should be built on this system? And if they want to update it, they just send me the update like that. And that kind of usually convinces them to get across the line. And then, as you know, clients come in a million shapes and sizes, and that's when you sort of find out whether that client's a good fit for your agency. Because if they're going to be stubborn, it doesn't matter what they say. ultimately at the end of the day, 6 months later, when they don't have the results, it's going to be your fault. So you can't, John or, Richard, I've been with you now for 6 months and we've moved up here, but when I look at the analytics, we don't have that much more traffic there. Well, you can't say, I told you 6 months ago, we've got to fix this issue. It's not going to fly. So before you decide to work with that client, try to drill down on that stuff and make them see the light. And it can be difficult to explain technical things in a layman's term to a client, but that's the way I find works best, and focus more on conversions and more sales for them and more inquiries. That's why you're doing this. You're not doing this to have a better, more technical site. That's a side effect. Or it's vice versa as well. The reason I want to make your site so technically proficient and sound is because I want more sales for you, and that's the easiest path forward. Yes, I can get you more links, and yes, I can do that, but there's that risk I spoke about before. Links are pumping great. We're in second spot now for the first time ever. 4 weeks later, they're back to number 6 because the feedback just downvotes them, And you had a second part of that question about.
I can't quite remember now, but I think you're definitely right. It's a numbers game at the end of the day, and I think in some aspects as well, you do see some sites that are living on borrowed time, in particular.
Yeah.
100%. Coming back to the point you made about education as well, I was wondering if you could share any insight onto, sometimes you'll deal with stakeholders or marketing managers that may have read a blog or two and perhaps think that sometimes they're more educated than they may indeed be. And sometimes you can see that they'll benefit a lot from education, and the site will as well, but they just don't take too kindly to that. How do you try and navigate that on a day-to-day basis and provide someone with valuable information as a stakeholder rather than a client, and make sure that they take that on board without taking offense, I guess, at the same time as well?
Yeah, again, I just try to break it down into layman's terms and try to give them if you can't articulate something simple, you don't really know what you're talking about. So even a brain surgeon can tell you how to simply do that type of brain surgery, and a studying brain surgeon will ramble on for 5 minutes before he's even made an incision. So just get to the black and white of it with that client and detach yourself from it personally, like you said, and just tell him the raw, dry data and back it up with a few links, I guess, from reputable resources. Like if you're talking about anything site related, speed or user enhancement, there's a million links straight from Google that'll give you that. And just back it up. Look, he's straight from the horse's mouth. You should be focusing on site speed moving into the future. We're going to favor this. And of course, you're not going to find any evidence to suggest how much of a benefit they'll give you, but just point them gently in the right direction and try to make sense of it in black and white for them. Because if they were to do the same to you, there's nothing that they can really substantiate their argument with besides some kind of stubborn attachment to a previous CMS or a previous way of doing things. And when you really drill down into it, just by asking another question after they answer, ask them another question and get deeper and deeper and deeper, and then they'll finally come out with it. It's like, oh, we just can't afford to do that at the moment or something, or whatever the reason may be.
No,
and I kind of, sorry, Dyson, I kind of set that frame with the client at the start of the call too. Whereby I tell them up front, you're not paying me to be nice here, John. I'm just going to tell you the flat out truth. You can argue as long as you want, and I'll tell you the reasoning behind your argument and why they're flawed. But I'm just going to tell you the truth flat out, whether you like it or not. I'm not going to cater to your half-baked ideas based on your half-baked knowledge in the industry. And I'll just tell you flat out. And when you set that frame up front like that, it makes it easier 10 minutes later to say, no, I completely disagree with that, John. And here's why, A, B, C, D. And then you can just keep interjecting like that whenever they've got an idea that is going to make your job harder. Because for your job to be easy, you just need a client to say, how much do you need to do it? Okay, That's a great budget. Do you have one step lower? Yep. Okay, I'll give you all that money. There's a budget. Go do what you want to do, man. And you tell me how you're going or if you need anything else. That's the kind of client you want. And you don't want the other client that buys a dog and then stands in the front yard himself and barks.
I agree 100%. You want to set those foundations and guidelines early on. I think that's
Yeah.
the way to move forward. Yeah, definitely. Thanks.
No worries.
Yeah, I think your point about sharing the Google documentation with clients is a good one.
Yeah.
Like straight from the horse's mouth, you know, like,
Yep.
and we have done a bit of that in the past. And I think, yeah, if you do share the information straight from the client, from Google, it will usually push them towards getting things implemented.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the other thing is you're right. Like you sometimes have to be frank with clients and just be straight up with them and say like, yeah, this isn't the right way to do things, or you shouldn't be using this CMS. And that's what I think we've done over the years, is just be honest with people.
Yeah.
There's no point trying to be like, be nice with them and just tell them like something that's not true. And
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of agencies out there that they just try to pull the wool over people's eyes, you know, and they'll just do the bare minimum to just keep the retainer ticking along. They won't actually have those hard conversations with clients to actually get things implemented.
Yeah.
So no, I think that's a very good point.
And you only have to be right once too, James. You only have to have that headbutting once, and then and then they give you permission to do it, and they see the results, and they'll never question you again.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's one of those things that you just have to do right.
I always tend to have those conversations with people as soon as I see the Revolution slider. Boom, it's got to go. Oh, it's so pretty, you know, our graphic designer done this and this and this. And then I think I've even got a template of an email where I just got 10 high authoritative links from Yoast, HubSpot, this, that, the other. Sliders kill conversions.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the sliders. I'm not the biggest fan of like certain page builders too that people get stuck on.
Yeah.
You know, like we have a lot of issues where people get stuck with like WP Bakery and it like bloats the site, and and just one little error can like shut your whole WordPress site down, and a lot of shenanigans.
And it's crazy too with clients like with WP Bakery. So it's in HTML. Well, can't I just use WP Bakery and like that? Oh, you really want that, do you, John? Yeah, I do. When's the last time you updated your site? Oh, 2018. And again, at the detriment of thousands of visitors a month, he wants to just keep that in his back pocket just in case he wants to make an update. And then even with WP Bakery, he called you 1 month ago. Oh, can you change that and that and change that heading to that? Sure, I can. There you go. Another 5 minutes on the tab. Why didn't you do it? It's in WP Bakery.
Yeah.
Even though they've got that, they still outsource it anyway.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. Like this is the discussion that we always used to try, like we usually have with clients, is to like try to get them onto the right tech stack, you know, try to get them using the right things. And sometimes that is a hard thing, you know, like we had a call for client this week and they were using like a couple of different CMSs and things like that. And you're creating like a lot of additional work for your team. Just get on one thing, you know, like get a standardized process on one CMS. Like otherwise you're going to be building things for multiple CMSs. You're going to be creating 3 times the work. You know? I usually have those frank discussions with people, and sometimes there's some people don't like that for whatever reason. Sometimes people get onto certain things for like certain reason, you know, like some team members might want like one thing and the other team members like the other, and it's complex.
And these days too, there's static site builders whereby you can easily manage 500-600 page sites in pure HTML. It's just all in folders. Like you look in the back, how are you going to manage a 600 page site in WordPress? You're going to go to the pages menu. You're just going to paginate through all the pages. On your local machine, you open the folder. They're just every single page is in its own folder. It's just as quick. I can I can log into my local machine and change one paragraph of text on page 494 quicker than you can do it on WordPress. For a start, by the time you even log into WordPress, my IDE is already open. By the time you go in the search bar in your page menu and search for it, and then realize, oh, there's 14 other titles that have got that word in it. And by the time you finally click through that page you want, I've probably already done it. And then I just re-upload the site. And then uploading a 600-page HTML site is probably going to still be less than 5 megabytes, maybe at the most 8 megabytes. So uploading 8 megabytes via FTP, you're talking about 12 seconds. Maybe even 8 seconds. And by the time you go to that WordPress page and save it, refresh it, check it, clear the cache. Yeah, it's just, there's no, you can't not do that because of the developer experience. It's actually better. It's actually more pleasurable to do it as a developer like that than to fiddle around on the front end of WordPress and do it like that. But as you say, there's so many big businesses tied to those structures, and it's a lot of work to get you to where you want to go. At the end, the client came to you because they want to rank #1, and you've taken this rabbit hole direction all the way down. But if you don't do it now, it could well up bite you in the ass when you finally do get to the very top. And I think too, Google gives you initially that benefit of the doubt. Like, you might do a killer link campaign despite advising the client that you should change his CMS, etc. And that killer link campaign might get them there. Google gives you the benefit of a doubt for a few weeks, and they don't like the feedback they get, and down you go again. And then I think next time you've got an even harder job, because if you go build another 10 killer links, each costing you 20, 30 hours of work to create that content and acquire those links, they're just going to ignore it because we told you last time that you still haven't fixed the problem. Well, they don't tell you anything. That's the problem.
Exactly. What are you doing for hosting, Richard? Like, what's your hosting stuff? Like, are you talk to us about that? How you?
Yeah, it's bit of a mixed bag and definitely hard to test. Like, tests are great, and I'm a avid believer in them, but just haven't got time to do everything. But hosting, I believe Google does give you the benefit of a doubt. If your site's in Sydney, as long as your time to first byte in Sydney is good, you should be fine. However, all things being equal, again, I'd rather my time to be first byte be good worldwide. So I still suggest people use Cloudflare, as that's a bit of a shortcut. Have the site hosted where you want, and then just use Cloudflare as that reverse proxy to make sure, you know, you're proxying that traffic, and whether you request it from Singapore or Germany, you still get a decent time to first byte, even though you won't, because it won't be in the cache, because you don't get many visitors from Germany to your Brisbane electrician site. So you just got to be careful. It's a balance there. Don't overkill it. If it's any type of international site whatsoever, like you get New Zealand traffic and Australian traffic and one other traffic, yeah, I go the whole shebang. I try to get it onto Google, get it onto Google Cloud, and get Google Cloud CDN to serve the pages as well. And that's by far and best the best time to first byte, the best DNS, the best SSL, everything.
Yeah, I've heard that from a few people. They're switching over to Google Cloud as a good option.
Yeah, and the secondary cheaper option is just to use Cloudflare.
Yeah, Cloudflare.
The problem is that most sites can't deliver a full page cache. So even though you're using Cloudflare, the request still hits the server, and the request still hits the server because it's server-side rendering, and the page needs to be built before it gets sent back to the client. When it's just static HTML, the server doesn't even get called upon. So once you load the page once, it's cached on your browser permanently. You can actually turn your internet off and navigate back and forth through the site. As long as you've visited one of each page, you can switch your internet off and the site still works and still loads 100 out of 100. Or like a normal user, come back in 3 or 4 weeks time and click on the site and boom, it's there instantly, and it didn't even hit the server because it's still on the browser cache, because the whole page is static the way it should be. So on any site, it doesn't matter how big a company it is or what services they're providing, realistically, there should be only 3 or 4 pages that are server-side rendered. That's the login page, Because when you hit the login page, I need to hit the server to see if you're already logged in or not. If you are logged in, I'll send you straight to the account page. So I must hit the server. And then there's your account page. And really, on your account page, it should be everything. It shouldn't be account / subscriptions, account / invoices, account / change details. It should all be under account, and it should just be neatly laid out with tabs or hidden, like just in drop downs or tabbed content. So when I do click on subscriptions, it doesn't change the page URL. So that would mean on an entire site that's 500 pages, a big insurance website, there's only 2 pages that ever need to hit the server, the login page and the account page. Every other page on that 500 page insurance site should be completely static. And okay, some of those pages might load, and there might be elements down the page that require database input, because here's the latest trends for the 2012 car crashes or something, and that needs to come from the database. Chances are that is not in the first fold of the screen. So that page, the whole entire page, can still come from a CDN and not even hit the server. It can just be loaded straight from the CDN. As soon as the page is loaded, the JavaScript executes a little bit later, like 2 or 3 seconds later, whatever you set the delay to. That pulls in the data from the database and hydrates the page. And then by the time the user scrolls the mouse, even 1 or 2 millimeters, the data is already hydrated in the page that needed to come from the database. But the rest of the whole page, the skeleton and everything, and 99% of the page's content is already just straight there, straight from the CDN. And that little 1% you're missing, because it needs to come from a live database, is hydrated. And that's how every single site in ultimate reality should be built. Otherwise, every other site is using server-side rendering for every single page on the website, when 90% of pages don't need nothing from the database. They were the same as they were yesterday, as the day before, etc. And only a small smidgen of pages need something, and that can be executed in the way I said. But to do that, it's not that hard. Speaking from a developer's perspective, it's not that hard. It's just that no one does it. Everyone just fires up their usual tools and puts really no thought into it and builds everything the same as everyone else builds it. And you end up with the same problems, either bad SEO from client-side rendering or an uphill battle. I wish client-side rendering worked. I love it. I see massive sites, monstrous sites. Sydney Tools is one good example. And then they called me the next day, and 100,000 visitors down the drain overnight as soon as they rolled out their new React site. The client-side rendering, and Google couldn't crawl it. You look at the source code, it's just like an iPhone. There's ways around that, and to fix that, of course, now and Google's getting better at doing that and rendering those sites for them. But any day of the week, I'd rather a static HTML page than a client-side rendered page any day of the week.
Yeah, because Google...
I believe Google gives those favors to brands, big brands. Oh, look, Sydney Tools has done this. Oh, we know them. We trust them. They're a huge brand. Let's work around it and try to minimize the impact that they've given us, because they've given us nothing but an iPhone.
Yeah, exactly.
Where Joe down the street does it, and they'll just slam him back to page 5 until he complies and gives the Google bot different pages, which in itself is really bad practice. Like, the only way to do it, client-side rendering, is to, when the Google bot comes, to serve them a static version of the page. It doesn't render the same, because Google doesn't render the JavaScript content. So in essence, you're kind of voluntarily giving Google page cloaks or doorway pages, which is what they are. They're doorway pages, or they're kind of cloaking. When the Google bot comes, you get this page. When a normal visitor comes, you get that page. It's the biggest no-no in Black Hat history, and has been since the beginning of time. Yet modern sites are still choosing to this day, and we're going to launch a big brand. Yep, no worries, let's do client-side rendering. Yes. And let's expect to rank as well.
Still a lot of people making silly mistakes even in today's market. But to wrap it up, Richard, do you want to give everyone a rundown of what SerpWorx is and how people can get in contact with you if they want to learn more about SerpWorx or all the other great stuff that you're doing?
Yeah, anyone can reach me at richard@serpworx.com. SerpWorx is a compilation of all the tools that I found useful, and it's still growing to this day. As an SEO practitioner, you need Ahrefs, you need Majestic, Moz. You don't need anything really, but it's a luxury to have. I don't need anything when I fix my car, but boy, it's handy to have a shifter. So, if we were to all have all the tools we want, we'd be up for subscriptions of thousands of dollars a month, and I still am. But point being that for your average SEO, they can get access to Majestic data, Moz data, SEMrush data without the need for accounts. Most guys have got accounts anyway, so it just serves as a complement for them. But the whole point of SerpWorx is just to make your job faster and to stop wasting your time. You want to know how hard it is to rank, just Google a keyword and turn SerpWorx on. Instantly, you'll know, what the average domain is for that niche, what the average word count is, what the average keyword density is, all of the averages given to you in, less than 3 seconds flat. And you can drill down into the sites and the SERPs without even having to open the sites. You can see what their H1s are, a whole slew of on-site data just straight in the SERPs without visiting the SERPs. And, you can see the site's best backlinks from the SERPs. And it's just ultimately to make your job quicker. Like if a client rings you and says, can I rank for car hire Sydney? What are you going to say? Maybe, no, I'll get back to you. Either one of those, it's a bad client experience. Maybe, who's this guy? I'm not working with him. He doesn't know what he's doing. Yeah, you can definitely rank for car hire Sydney. That guy's just a liar. You can't say that. No one can say that. No, you can't rank for car hire Sydney. Again, a liar or someone too lazy to even check. So turn SerpWorx on car hire Sydney. Average top 3 sites, trust flow between 40 and 45. Okay, it's doable. Yeah, you can rank for it. What's your domain? Again, you're going to be left in the wind there. Like he tells you his domain. What are you going to do? What are you going to do with it? You're going to quickly go and start copying and pasting his domain into a million tools. Visit his domain, turn SerpWorx on. In 2 seconds, you'll know everything about his site, domain age, trust flow, all of those stuff we were talking about. So I just said, Mr. Client, you're going to need 40. You've only got around 22. It's not a hard and fast rule, but that's kind of an average of what you've got. I see your domain age is 12 years old. Already this got clients thinking, who the hell is this guy? How does this guy know so much about my business when blah, blah, blah. And you just instantly see the who is right there. And you realize right then you're not even talking to the domain owner. So you're probably talking to a manager of the business who won't even have the authority to pull the pin on something that you say. And you can quickly find keywords that it is ranking for by opening the SEMrush module. Just open it right there without leaving the site, and you'll see where the lion's share of his traffic is coming from. Is it all branded traffic? It's a good client to work from. Is all his traffic coming for 2 or 3 big 2 keyword keywords? It's a bit of a dangerous client to take on because that's where the lion's share of his traffic's coming from. And it basically just make your job easier if you're doing any kind of digital marketing or online optimization. Save your time and just make your life easier. That's primarily what it was invented for. And it was invented out of pain. I was doing that. I was, saying maybe you can rank for car hire, maybe you can't. I've got to get back to you. Now I've got to go through Excel and go through Ahrefs and do all these correlation studies and to give you a direct, realistic answer that I'll back 6 months later and not just feed you rubbish over the phone just to get you as a client. And then the same thing, I'd go to a site and think, is this site good? It looks great. And then I look at it, it's not that great. Trust flow 3. Nice design though. But I would have thought this site was much better, and vice versa. I land on sites, what's this garbage? Trust flow 55. Jesus, this guy's been around a while. Domain age 19 years. Man, I'd love a link off this site, or I'd love to work with this site. That's the kind of business you could really transform.
Exactly.
And if that guy rang me cold and I went to his site, I'll be like, no, I can't work with you, mate. Your site's a 1 out of 10 and that's it. I'm not going to copy and paste your URL and go to the Wayback or hop over the Majestic and all that while I'm on the phone for you. I can only do one thing at once. And I'm not going to probably get back to him either. I'm just going to judge it on face value like everything else in life and say, it was an average site. The guy didn't sound like he knew what he was doing. I'm glad I don't have to try to rank that site for the keyword he wanted.
Exactly.
Just turn SerpWorx on. You realize you're sitting on a little gold mine there.
Yeah, no,
And
I think it's going to save a lot of people a lot of time. How many customers do you got over at SerpWorx now? Has it still, the tool's still been growing over the years? I know it's been around for a long time. It's one of the OG plugins that have been around. Like, you got a few customers still?
yeah, yeah, we got upwards of 5,000.
Okay, that's pretty good.
It's like you said, it's an old school tool. It started off really slow. It's all self-funded initially, and it just was a slow and low burn, you know. And it's just constantly improving, and it's here to stay, hopefully. And there'll never really be a quicker way to check stuff than to use a browser extension. There's a million good browser extensions out there. Just what sets SerpWorx apart is that you get access to that premium data without having to pay for it, and hence the cost of it. You know, otherwise we'd probably give it away for free, but those APIs are so expensive, and it allows us to leverage a fair bit of data for the end client. The end client can get the SEO data from every provider for 400 sites a day for the lowest plan of $29. So no one's checking the SEO metrics for 400 sites a day. And if you are, well, you're doing some kind of automated outreach, and there's other programs for that as well.
Yeah, and I think not even for agency, I think for like for affiliates too that are searching for keyword opportunities, and they want to see like, oh, how competitive is this vertical, and looking for new niches or new clusters they want to target, they could utilize SerpWorx as well effectively. So no, I think there's a lot of opportunity.
And realistically too, all the providers have got their own strengths and weaknesses. So if you're just using Ahrefs and you come across that site, it's a great site, you know, DR40 and UR45, that's great. Well, then why is the trust flow only 13? And why is the DA only 22 then? What do Moz and Majestic see that Ahrefs don't? And you just won't do that without SerpWorx. And vice versa. If you see everything strong across the board, you know that that must be a strong site. UR50, DA50, and TrustFlow 50, they all correlate really well, where it's not often like that. And it comes and goes. Like, you'll be shocked at some of the links Moz find that Ahrefs don't pick up on. And the same goes for Majestic. You know, it's a Ahrefs DR of 30, but it's a trust flow 55. What did Majestic find there to value that so high, you know?
Yeah, I always use Majestic as well for like doing historic data review. You know, like if you want to look at the link profile for something like 10 years ago, Ahrefs might only have eight years of data, but Majestic will have the longevity. And that's like, you got to have all the different sources, because the thing about Ahrefs, it's only one crawler. You know, Majestic bot is its own crawler, so they've got their own data as well. So no, it's a good point.
Yeah, I don't think Moz pushed the point hard enough, but about a year ago they updated their whole link profile and they really swung back into the game. You don't hear much from Moz founder Rand anymore.
I think he left the business. He left the business like 5 years ago.
But about a year and a half ago, when they updated their index, my God, they used to find some great links. And I'm talking like big links, and just, I was astonished. Like, I find, you know, 4 DA45 links on these sites, and then I go on the other link checkers, I can't even find them. They're not even there, not even close to finding them. And it's like, how did Moz find that better than that? And again, off the back of that big link index they done, I just don't think many people paid attention to it, but they got a decent link index now, man. And the same as SEMrush does as well.
SEMrush has been investing in their link index. That was like one of the tools that I always utilize to find PBNs and stuff like that, because they search with so many different user agents, and people block all the user agents, but then SEMrush will just keep releasing new ones. So that's another tactic that was good to use. And all the tools are definitely stepping up their game, you know. If anything, Ahrefs maybe put a little bit of the emphasis off their tool, and they're trying to invest in the search engine now, you know, and people are worried that their tool's not going to be as sophisticated now because they're putting emphasis into their search engine. So that's something to think about. But But anyway, Richard, no, I really appreciate your time today. Thanks for coming on to chat with the team. And yeah, no, it's been great to have a chat. And yeah, I'd recommend everyone checks out SerpWorx. I think it's a great plugin. Highly recommend it. And yeah, thanks for your time, mate. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, James. Good to talk. Anytime, mate. You're welcome. And I had a ball. Thanks, Darcy.
Thanks, Richard.